Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino here, and we have a terrific guest. We have Joseph Wang. He is an e-commerce entrepreneur. What's going on, Joseph?
Hey man, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know we'd kind of been in touch back and forth. We met a way while back, so it's great to see you, and I'm really excited for this podcast.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, where are you right now?
I'm in Manila, Philippines, or more specifically, Bonifacio Global City. But it's really very different from the rest of the Philippines. It's more of like the city life, and yeah, things are much nicer here.
Okay, absolutely. I know I introduced you as an e-commerce entrepreneur. I just find, not only you, but also your lifestyle very interesting. For those of us who aren't very familiar with you, could you kind of give us a bit of background on you and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so um, I'll start from the beginning, where out of college, I was super confused about life and super introverted at the time, and so um, long story short, man, it's just been a big journey for me of like developing who I am and like becoming that 2.0 version of myself constantly every year and trying to change. But I got started into e-commerce about 5 years ago, and strangely enough, like it was on Facebook. It was really through a Facebook group where I just saw someone's post, and I was like, man, like this guy's offering coaching for 5 grand to start e-commerce. And I had already been through the self-development round. I was like, all right, it's time to just jump in, and I paid him 5 grand. And that's really what got me started on e-commerce. And then I met a guy so when I sold my business in 2018, I did a world travel and I met a guy in Colombia. He was also an Amazon. He's also an Amazon, yeah, FBA seller. We do private label, like creating our own brands. And basically, he introduced me to the Philippines, and I really loved it. And I was like, man, this is really cool. And the city was super nice. One of the best gyms in the world, I think. Um, and it's like 1 minute walk from my house. So I've been staying here for a little bit over a year, but I plan to go back to the US so I can see my family and whatnot. So
Yeah,
yeah.
of course. Of course. So aside, what is it about living in the Philippines as an expat that you tend to like?
Say that again. What is it about that the Philippines?
Yeah, what is it about the Philippines that you like? Why do you like living in the Philippines?
So, when I was doing world travel, and I know you know that I went to Vietnam and stuff, which by the way, I think Vietnam has like the second best food in the world. Thai is probably first. It's truly a hidden gem that I don't think people realize. You don't really hear much about Vietnam, and it's truly a culinary like beauty. I met a Michelin star chef there, a really famous Michelin star chef. He did give me his number and stuff. We exchanged info, but I think his handwriting was so sloppy that I couldn't figure it out. Like it's like, man, I even forgot his name, but I remember hearing him, and I just Googled it while I was on the spot when I was at this restaurant. And it's funny, the owner of the restaurant was there. Oh, I'm digressing. I always do this. But the owner of the restaurant was there, and he was talking to this guy, and I was like, man, like this guy's something. This was a very fine dining restaurant. Like it was $50 meal, which for Vietnam is very expensive. And then I walked up to them and I said hello, and I already Googled the guy, so I already had an idea. And I was like, oh, dude, I just Googled you. And I was like, oh, man, he's a Michelin star chef. But anyway, since I digressed, the Philippines, why I really love it though, man, is like when I did world travel, it was really hard to speak the language. And in the Philippines, it was like super smooth to just like talk to anybody and everybody. The food here isn't that great, but the friend took me to when you imagine the Philippines, you think more of a third world country, but there is like richer cities. And this friend was living here in BGC, and dude, it's amazing. Like, I don't know, the gym has everything you need. I've met a lot of celebrities at that gym, but it has like a steam room, a ice plunge, a hot tub. That was one allure because I'm someone who works out a lot, and I want to keep a healthy life. And then the city's very walkable. Uh, and it's just like this little, honestly, the second you leave BGC, which is a very small city, it becomes more third world. But I fell in love with the Philippines because of BGC, because it's like city life and it feels very comfortable and it's very at home. And then the fact that there's other entrepreneurs around me who are doing e-commerce, exactly what I do. And that was just awesome, to have that kind of connection where you could hang out and just like over the weekends you work hard and then just maybe you watch a movie at someone's place, or go to the mall or something like that. So that was the main allure for me, the English speaking part, not the food, definitely not the food, the nice comfortable like city, and then just the entrepreneurs around.
Sure. So I'm just kind of curious. You mentioned the entrepreneurs. I mean, is it, where do most Westerners tend to live? I mean, do you all kind of live in the same, condos or apartment complex, or how throughout the city, or what's the layout like?
So typically, I've met a lot of Westerners and foreigners, but like specifically when it comes to e-commerce, um, BGC is going to be a place where the more better off entrepreneurs are doing. I hate to say that, but like BGC is expensive. It's the rent on the low end is 700, on the high end it's like 4,000. Food wise is going to be more expensive than Dallas, Texas, where I'm from. Like if you want to go out to eat, even groceries are rather expensive. So like usually it's going to attract the entrepreneurs who are doing a little bit better off, which my friends are doing much better than me, and so they're all here. But I've met plenty in Cebu and Manila, going for more of a cheaper rent place where it's like $100 a month or $200 a month. But I've seen plenty of foreigners outside of BGC and Cebu, I hear, and stuff like that. But the layout for BGC, which is what I'm knowledgeable at, you're gonna find people doing fairly well.
Absolutely. So could you kind of maybe kind of rewind and take us back to, you mentioned you're from Dallas and now you're living as an e-commerce entrepreneur in the Philippines. Could you kind of explain like that progression, kind of that transition into doing this?
Hmm. Yeah, so when I started e-commerce, which is Amazon FBA, like I started with wholesales, which is like if you're buying from Nike and you're buying in bulk and then just reselling that on Amazon. And I switched to branding, which is like you create your own brand from China and then you ship it to the US. At the time, I was actually working for Raytheon, and then I moved to Fujitsu. And obviously, when you have a job, you're not able to really move. I still had my side hustle going on. Um, I remember being at a mastermind and I met like big entrepreneurs there. This mastermind cost like 20 grand a year. And I was like, man, it's just time for me to quit my job. And so I quit my job. And then like it's hard for me to go back so far, but I'll try to, because you change as a person so much that you kind of forget the past. Um, but I remember at the time I was like, man, I can't leave. Like I gotta stay here and I gotta work on my business. And for some reason I didn't think I could hire, even though I was making like at that time 100 grand a year. And it's like, dude, like just hire someone, man. Like, but I couldn't replicate my success. It was almost like you work hard, you kind of get lucky, but you don't know how to replicate it. If you're an entrepreneur, then you understand that, where it's like, or maybe you're in that phase. But I was at that phase at the time, and I really believed I couldn't work anywhere I wanted. There's part like unknown and fear, and like not knowing if you could go somewhere that could work. Um, but yeah, so I spent a year just working my business. I didn't really even do much, to be honest. Like I didn't grow the business at all. I kind of just went back to playing games, video games. I'm a video game addict. I'm not anymore, but I was for all my life. Um, and like, I just remember how dumb I was at the time, because like on one end oh, by the way, I'm wearing a Warrior Week shirt, which is a program that's like 100 grand, almost 100 grand. And they were the ones that really unshackled me. Like they were the ones who I've realized in my life, I'm digressing again, but I've realized in my life that people always lie to themselves in some fashion. If you look at the conflictingness of my business at that time, right? I was like, I can't travel, but I was working on my business technically, but really playing games all day. So like you kind of trick your brain to believing certain things. And when you can remove those barriers, when you can see exponential growth. But finally, I sold my business that year, 2018, in October, and I sold it for low six figures. And at that time, I was like, "Look, I have no more excuses. Like, I want to go do world travel, And then I did that. And honestly, I was thinking of just going straight home after that year of world travel and just working from home again. And then that's when I met that entrepreneur in Colombia, and he introduced me to the Philippines. And then like I just got exposed to something else, and now I realize that technically I could live wherever I wanted to continue doing this business. There are some hassles that you have to go through. I hate having to call US numbers. There's a few things that I don't like. Apparently, like when I sold, really quick, when I sold my land, I'm sure you'll know this, I had to pay $200 for an e-notarization, like an online notarization. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is weird. Like, can't I just sign it online? But apparently you had to be there in person. And so I was like, dude, all I had was someone just telling me, okay, do this e-sign here. It was 200
Sure.
bucks. I was like, that's a ripoff.
Yeah.
But so there's some minor inconveniences, but overall, like, uh, there was definitely a lot of mindset changes that had to happen. There was people that introduced me to a nicer place, because when I was traveling, like I wouldn't have chosen to live in Thailand. I wouldn't have chosen to live in Colombia, Vietnam, Taiwan. Like I wouldn't have chosen these places, but the Philippines was like really nice. So it was really like a big help meeting my friend who introduced me to such a nice city within the Philippines. Because if I had just gone to the Philippines and went to Manila, like I would have hated it. Would have hated it.
Yeah, that's fair. You kind of mentioned a bit about it. Kind of sounded like your big transition was with Warrior Week, the shirt you're wearing. Could you kind of explain, maybe kind of maybe some of the lessons learned or like psychological shifts you had?
Yeah, so there was plenty, man. One of the biggest ones for me, and there was a lot of big ones, was that as a guy, as an Asian man growing up, like you, it's part culture, but like you grow up thinking like, okay, in church I have to act a certain way, in a business environment I have to act a certain way, in this environment I have to act a certain way to this person, because this person operates like as an angry guy, I gotta act like I'm walking on stones, or like this guy is more chill, so I can act a certain way. And one of the things for me was realizing that like these are stories that your brain creates. Technically, someone else could be like, this guy is an angry guy, but I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm just gonna act the way I'm gonna act. Uh, can I cuss on this? It's
Yeah, yeah,
actually
it's
really
cool, man.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I realized that like, holy cow, all my life I've been living with these shackles, like literally that I've shackled myself with. And that was one of the most freeing things, because like I think every person is weird to some extent. They're very unique. And they hide that away because they're like, oh, people think it's weird when, let's just say someone's gay, right? They're like, oh, I gotta hide that away because people don't like that. And that's adding the shackle to yourself, right? Or maybe you like, I don't know, BDSM, right? And like, you're like, okay, that's weird. I'm not gonna share that. Or maybe you're like, uh, I'm trying to think of like the big topics. Like maybe you're black, right? And it's like, oh, it's white people. I gotta act a certain way. It's like, dude, those are just shackles that you're adding to yourself. And think about how freeing it could be if you could just be yourself and not have to worry about, not give a f about like if this person is this way or this person won't receive you. And instead, my mindset has now become, look, I'm gonna be me, and if this person doesn't resonate, then this friendship or this whatever isn't meant to be. And I strongly believe in that now, where it's like, look, it can just be me. And if you don't like it, then it just like, cool, our paths don't cross at this time. That was one of the lessons. Another lessons was that we lie to ourselves. It was a huge one for me, because, I had considered myself a bodybuilder for so long. I don't anymore, but because I did bodybuilding, I legit competed. I looked good, but I still considered myself a bodybuilder for years after, even though I competed once. And when I looked at my life, I was like, dude, you're not really working out. You're not doing the bodybuilding diet. I mean, I was working out, but it was like, because I was traveling. It was when I was traveling. I was working out like a few times a week, not every day. And I wasn't eating. The main thing was that I wasn't eating the way that a bodybuilder does, right? I wasn't competing anymore. And for some reason, my brain was like, oh, I'm a bodybuilder. And I remember another lie I had was like, in relationships. Um, that's a longer story, but like, I had never really dated ever. And I had gone through the phase of like trying to learn women and trying to figure things out with women. And I did practice it for like a year, and it worked well, and then I stopped. But I was like, in my brain, I was like, oh, I'm decent with women, and the results weren't there. And it was like, I don't know, man. Like, it shocks me how much lies that we tell ourselves. Um, but like, so anyway, the lie thing was another thing. I thought of a side tangent on lies. One of the things I realized is when you stop lying to yourself, the other thing you have to face is judgment, right? You're like, oh man, I was so unproductive today. It's like another hurdle I faced was like, once you remove the lies, you're like, oh my God, like I'm really bad at this. And you should never judge yourself. You should just openly, barely see everything that's going on in your life and then be like, I need to work on this. How do I work on this? How do I get better at this? And when you start asking those questions and you remove all the judgment, you stop beating yourself up, you're free to actually work on what's going on. To share a bit of the results of that, like this new businessman, I've invested about 100,000 into it. And dude, for like freaking 12 months, it wasn't doing good. And I thought like, man, like what is going on? Like the old business was successful and I'm better as a person now. I have all the knowledge I need. And what I realized was it was simply a matter of things like I didn't have processes created at the time. So I was building up processes this year. I didn't like processes give you the ability to replicate your success again and again and again. And it's something I didn't have in the last business. And I was refining myself from those processes 1% better every single day. I was getting a little bit better. And I now call something which is called learning how to learn. And it's like, I think most people, you'll teach them something and they'll just listen to it passively. Like when I listen to stuff, when I learn, I don't waste my time just listening. I'm like, how do I implement this? I'll pause it after even a minute and I'd be like, how do I implement this? What do I do to make this something real, tangible in my business that I can actually operate on? And if it's useless, 2x speed and just keep moving until I hear something that I'm like, boom, I can implement that. And I think that's truly learning how to get mastery. Dude, I'm sorry. I know I digress like a ton. I jump everywhere. I have like an ADHD mind. But what was the main question before I keep going? Oh, from Warrior Week, what were the lessons? Yeah, so that's like some examples, man, of lessons learned. There was many lessons learned in that. It was one of the most life-changing programs I've ever been to. Um, Also, I actually had a dream about it tonight, believe it or not, because it was scary too. Like going through that experience, they mimic Navy SEAL training. They do a lot of psychological like breakdown. They break your ass down. And it's funny because I did have a dream today, and I was like, I don't want to go through this again. Like, no. And it was like a Warrior Week 2.0, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. I quit. Oh man, because I'll tell you one funny thing is the guy asked me, what do you like, why do you want to be healthy? Like, what is your goals for being healthy? And I was like, man, I want to work on my cardiovascular health because like I work out a lot and I lift weights and, like I care about my heart health. And he said, shut the fuck up. He grabs me and I'm not joking. He throws me down this mountain. I'm like tumbling down and stuff. And yeah, but to tell you the answer to that, right? The brain is unclear a lot. One of the things that Warrior cleared up is stop giving these stupid goals that you have no ties to, right? Like we always say, I want to be a better man. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better real estate person. It's like, dude, what does that even mean? Like, how do you even implement something that gets you to be better? And why do you really want to be better? And so their point was like, look, if you're going to say something like you want to work on your cardiovascular health, which is absolute bullshit, you have to tie a very strong reason, right? It might be like when I was young, my father never was able to play with me because as a kid, you have better cardiovascular, obviously, like you have so much energy, and he just couldn't keep up. And you think like, man, like what are my values? Like I really want to have kids and I really want to teach them well. And if I'm not doing well from the cardiovascular side, like how am I going to keep up with them? And I tie that even further now where it's like, look, like I'm 30 now and I'm feeling more and more health problems that come up. My metabolism has started to drop. I've noticed that. I used to eat a ton. And I'm like, dude, I like no judgment. I continue to keep working on how do I get better at adding cardiovascular exercises to my workouts. But that's the second tie-in, which is like health. It's something that I feel. It's pain that I feel. And so yeah, that's just an example of clarity of like, why do you want to be better a man? It's like it. Anyway, I hear this all the time, and I'm just like, they're not going to do anything. Very likely. I want to make more money. It's like, okay, why? But yeah, so many lessons learned from Warrior Week. Those are honestly just a few, but most life-changing experience ever.
Absolutely. You may have touched on it a bit, but why do you think that people kind of have these kind of subtle lies to themselves?
Uh, that's a hard question. I think everybody's different, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I wish I knew, but I really don't know. My brain's like, I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
no,
know that you got to get out of that. It's like success will start to come as you really eliminate that. I was gonna say, I forgot. I went on a different tangent, but like results wise in my own business, right? I mentioned that it was struggling and whatnot. And as of recent, my current launches have started to do well. Like they're getting better and better, and I'm starting to see profitable days. And I'm like, wow, this is very replicatable, right? Um, and sometimes, I think you work on something so long, and you over a year now for this business, 100 grand, and it's like, man, like what is wrong? Like I have everything I need. And I remember back then I used to think I'm missing a secret. No, you're not missing a secret. You just need to work, get better, think smarter, like continue to learn and stick to your craft. Get 1% better every single day. I didn't understand that concept when I was in my last business, and I don't know why it didn't hit, but um, like as I do these principles, I know that this new business that I'm doing next year in 2021, I'm almost positive it's going to hit 7 figures of revenue. Like the trajectory of what I'm doing is very clear. It's like everything's so replicatable now, but it took months of being like, how do I create a process out of what do I do? And like if you don't have clarity of what you're doing and you don't have a process out, how are you supposed to get better? Unless you have this process written out and it's like, oh, when this happens, I do X. And then you test it and you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I think I can get a better result if I add this to it. And you just continue to do that. And you slowly start to see the results. And it takes time. And I don't know, I hate this whole culture of like millionaire really quick. And don't get me wrong, I have met people who've gotten rich like off a lucky product, but they can't replicate their success. They or maybe they sell it and then they go through the phase of what I'm going through. But yeah, so but most people who've done well, they've had years of experience behind them. For me, it's been what, 5 years or so, and about a year off, like, and then like a year of playing video games and a year of not really trying. But yeah.
fair enough. Fair enough. So when you talk about being able to replicate something or having a business process, what would that mean? Having a process?
So it's like, for example, let's take real estate, right? If you just start reaching out to people for wholesaling and you get someone to actually like, give you the I forgot, I think it's like a contract or something, and whatever, right? And you make your first sale and you make some money and you're like, yeah, and you continue to do that, right? While winging it, your chances of success are very low. But what if you were like, okay, my responses with people have been good when I start my intro with this exact sentence, or when I just be me and I build rapport, and or maybe you're doing calls, right? Maybe like if you're not like logging it, right? 1,000 of your calls, when you start it with X, have a 10% chance of them continuing the conversation. But what if you wrote down that process and you found a 30% chance where they continue the conversation, and then you hire someone and you give them that exact script? Now you have someone with cheap labor, let's say from the Philippines call center, I don't know, to go do that for you so you can focus on another area of wholesaling or whatever it is. And, like you move from there. Or I'm not very well versed in real estate anymore. Um, but let's use drop shipping, right? Like, do you know drop shipping? Have an idea?
A bit, but could you kind of explain more about what it is?
Okay, so drop shipping is basically when you just create an ad on Facebook and you say, oh, hey, we're selling this product. And really, when someone buys it, you just have China, the warehouse, directly ship it to the customer, right? If you just like keep testing products and you finally hit one winner and it makes money, but if the product dies out, well, how do you replicate that success, right? It was a lucky win. It's like, no, you have to have certain criteria for what made the product work. What do you think made the product work? And don't get me wrong, you're gonna be wrong, right? You're gonna be like, oh, I think it was this, and you're gonna be wrong. But as long as you write that down, you keep testing that hypothesis until it works really well. And then whatever hypothesis you have that works super well, you just keep doing that. But unless you start writing down what goes on, another example is like, okay, well, right now I'm always pricing things at about 50% profits. Or right now with the Facebook ads, I'm always adding emojis, or you know what I mean? Like you're writing down something like, for example, when you create a Facebook ad, 2 emojis, call out something, give them a reason for why they should buy or why you're selling, and then do video ads only, right? And you test that. And that's your process. You keep doing that for 30 days and you go, my results have been sucky. I need to change that. So you change your process, and instead of videos, add pictures on your Facebook ads. Like, oh, okay, this is now a 40% success rate. Okay, well, that's my process. What would happen if I gave that to someone else and had them do it? Would they be able to do it? And look, if you're winging it and you're just like, oh, let me test this video ad. Oh, let me test this picture ad. You have no idea of the statistics. You have no idea of like what had a better success rate because you're just winging it. You're like, oh, I think this feels good. And this is where the lies come in, right? Because you believe that you're so smart and you're like, I'm so good at this. I've spent 2 years at this. This is what I did in my new business, right? Earlier on, I was like, I sold the business for revenue wise is doing 500 grand a year. And I was like, oh, I'm so smart. This new business is going to crush it. I already got a lot of capital. Let me just dump that capital in. And no, man, I failed so hard. The first 3 products I launched absolutely failed. And I was like, okay, something needs to change. I wasn't the same entrepreneur I was before. And so I was like, all right, I need to get better knowledge. I need to start writing processes. I need to start testing hypothesis. So you can imagine this year has been hypothesis test, fail, 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 get better at the process, change it a bit, see a little bit more results, and continue testing. And then like, boom, this works. Let's continue to do this. And now it's a replicatable business where you can just be like, all right, I have 10 people. They'll call back to wholesale. They'll call and they will always greet with, hey, what's up? Say their name. Wait for a response. They'll be like, oh, who's this? Like, oh, you don't remember me? And it's like, no, I'm just kidding. By the way, I'm someone, right? Right? You open with an opener that will catch someone off guard and then maybe like get them to actually talk, right? Because when people answer the phone, they're auto like, oh, what? You're a real estate person? Hang up, rather than throw the brain off, be like, oh, how do you know my name? You must know who I am. And then, oh, no, I'm just kidding. Break in the rapport and then move straight to your whatever. So that's what I mean by replicate your process. You got to have it written down. You got to be testing. You got to be like able to pass it on to someone else. Otherwise, you're not a business. Thankfully, I've been in a lot of masterminds, so this has been hammered into me, but it took forever for me to finally start doing it. Very stupid. Very stupid. But I'm glad where I am now and just grinding away. So.
Absolutely. It can kind of be tough, whether it's, kind of making a psychological transition or even just implementing, no processes to implementing those business processes. That can be a tough step for people to make.
Yeah, totally. It was very hard for me to make that step. So.
Absolutely. So what are you, could you kind of explain, you mentioned how you're working on an e-commerce business right now. What's in store for you in the future?
So I plan to just continue with this brand, build it to multi-7 figures. I plan to hire out more and more people. Like I want to build this business really big to make a lot of money. So in the future, I can start creating more nonprofit businesses, whether it's a desire for coaching that I have both on the life side and on the e-commerce side. And then just causes that I see in my day-to-day life, whether it's dumb things like, maybe like it's figuring out some kind of way to help poor people or figuring out some way to help uh, pets or figuring out some way to like environmental stuff. Like there's that desire in me. I don't know if you know Tony Robbins. Actually, I'm actually doing Unleash the Power Within tomorrow, his virtual event in Asia.
Cool.
He talks about how like there's two other human needs that most people don't tap into, and it's contribution and growth. But contribution is something that has been on my mind as of recent, and there's been that desire to help. But I'm like, dude, you're in no position to help until your business is doing well. And I mean, I help people as they come along, but like I would love to spend my time and energy creating a business that actually does more of an impact on people. But my current business is awesome in the sense that like it's it teaches kids certain things and very custom, very unique, and very appreciative of that business. I feel like there's purpose and meaning behind it, and I get cool messages from people. So like that's cool in itself to get those messages. But so yeah, man, just in store for me is build my business. That's all I care about right now. And then in the future, I'll do some coaching. I want to be an influencer to some extent to e-commerce guys, mainly actually to show, one, to teach e-commerce, but two, to show a different way. Because like I think right now in all the coaching stuff, it's like I shared this to you briefly, but it's like you learn from someone and then you naturally, because you've learned from them, you respect them. But the problem is if their values are not good, then you're influenced in a bad way. And it's like through this journey I've realized like you just have to be you. Whether it's like even women, right? Like us men, we always go through the phase of trying to figure out women. And the secret for me that started skyrocketing my success was just being me. And I was breaking so many rules in all the like whatever women guides out there, right? Pickup to relationships to whatever, right? I text a lot, like a hell of a lot. And I use really stupid humor that's my own. And look, like it was working super well. I was doing like a day to day on Tinder, and like I was just being me, man. And that's like I struggled for months, and it just didn't work until I started learning how to be me and breaking the rules of what people said works. And it's like, look, like in e-commerce and real estate, whatever it is, like you got to find your own unique way and not just mimic someone else. And to teach the things like the lie part, to incorporate some kind of warrior thing. I'm a very strong ethical guy and morals and values, and I see things that go on that just bother me. And I think like I don't see someone teaching e-commerce who does that. And I'd love to incorporate both for people who align with my values, to be able to teach e-commerce to people like that and find my tribe of people who also do e-commerce and have the same values. So that's what's in store for me.
Sure. So when you say, kind of wanting that tribe that has similar values, what sort of values are you, trying to build a community around that you think that the current influencers don't do?
So there's a lot, man. Like on one end, I don't see self-development incorporated. And I think like that's a huge part of any business, right? Like you talk about the lies from Warrior Week, right? They talk about how you should stop lying to yourself. That is one of the biggest like mindset. I think is one of the biggest reason why businesses don't do well. The other thing is if you go through this journey long enough, you're going to meet a lot of very successful people. And I have met a lot of scumbags, like a lot of people who they carry themselves one way and they're absolute full of shit. They're like they do black hat techniques to like their lives are shitty. Like okay, you have money, but then your health sucks. Or okay, you have money, but the way you treat women is absolutely garbage. Like, and look, if someone wants to own the fact that they love one night stands, cool. Like I can respect that. But like if you if you treat women bad, right? Like that's different to me. Or if you're lying to yourself and you're like, oh, I have a girlfriend, and then you're cheating. That's wrong, right? Like, own who you are. Like, just be honest to your girlfriend and be like, look, like, that's what I want right now. If you don't want that, cool. Like, you can leave. Rather than just cheat. Like, I know that's harsh, but anyway, so I'm digressing again. But basically, stuff like that, stuff like the self-development side, um, and stuff like that. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So it kind of seems like you're kind of having this dichotomy of that group that's, doing those things, whereas you're wanting to kind of um, create a community of like-minded people that are kind of into this self-development.
I've actually met plenty of people now who are very, very beautiful people inside. Like, I'm very good friends with them. It's funny because like the people I consider my greatest friends are people that I talk to maybe once every 3 months. It's weird. Like, we literally only talk once every 3 months, uh, or maybe sometimes 6 months. But like, when I talk to them, it's very deep. It's very connected. It's very long, long discussions, and like that's it. And I feel so fulfilled every time I talk to them. Right? They're not gonna BS you. They're not gonna like. I know quote unquote people I hang with who, they'll defend you even when you're wrong, and that's not right to me. Right? It's like, look, you gotta call out the things that are wrong so that someone can grow. But it's simple things like that. But that's a whole different topic on friendship. But anyway, I've met some people who are truly beautiful who I really connect with, but I don't see someone teaching Amazon FBA who will do what unique approach I will do. But again, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just working on my Amazon business, and I don't really care about anything else other than that. Literally just working on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on something I find really interesting, kind of that what you said about friends was that, you could talk to a friend once every 3 months and have that deep personal conversation with them. Um, could you kind of talk about that versus maybe kind of having those drinking buddies, having that, maybe people that you text on a frequent basis, maybe kind of the different, maybe how you view friendship?
So I I'm not sure. Like, I want to just preface this by saying, like, I don't think my way of doing friendship is for everybody. Maybe there's lessons learned, for sure. There's lessons learned in all, but just don't take it as exactly as I do it. But yeah, no. So I have friends who I hang out with locally, who they could be very normal people, who I just enjoy their presence. I just enjoy their energy, right? But I'm not going to listen to any advice they give because it'd be horrible, right? If you meet someone who, no offense, is like a normal person, like in a regular day job, and I'm not judging that by any means. I'm just saying you have to understand, you have to discern where people are at in their life, right? They have certain stigmas, they have certain things that they might do or say that is absolute bullshit, right? It might be that they give you friendship advice and you're like, in your brain, you're like, look, I appreciate you. I love hanging out with you. You have a beautiful soul, but please, in my mind, I'm like, I don't need friendship advice from you. Not that they do. I don't even remember them giving advice. Um, but then you have, like, let's say e-commerce entrepreneurs. You hang out with them for what? E-commerce, right? If they try to start sharing things about values and they do black hat techniques, like, you got to differentiate and discern, like, look, this is a friendship that we have a connection, which is that we do e-commerce together. And that's beautiful in itself. And I have certain filters that I use for friendships, right? If someone doesn't reciprocate, they're out, right? If I try to reciprocate and you don't, bye. It just didn't work out. Two, if I schedule appointments and I'm always the one scheduling appointments or times to meet up and you don't, goodbye, right? There has to be some kind of level of reciprocation. There also has to be some level of development in one's life, because usually, um, if someone hasn't done that, when I talk about like if someone's a normal person who works at a job, usually they haven't developed themselves. And so I usually am very like, it's a very specific type of hangout, just like a chill type of hangout where maybe we play board games or maybe, we just watch movies, or it's fun, right? But you have to be aware of influence. And influence, if you're younger, like the older you get, the better you are at it, at not getting influenced, but you're still influenced. You have to realize that you'll always be influenced in some way. So you have to be careful of who you hang out with, because their thoughts and whatever start to translate to you. If someone likes drinking, look, I've never been drunk. I do drink, but I've never been drunk, and I never want to be drunk. And I drink in moderation, and I drink I'll never drink to peer pressure. But if someone's drinking all the time, goodbye. Like, they don't fit your values, they shouldn't be in your life, right? Um, then I have friends who like, wait, what was the question again? It was like, how do I do friendship? Uh, do you want this topic's so long? It's like, do you want to know more of the criteria or like how I segment them out? But basically, man, if I look at my own life, I have the friends who are like mentor slash friends, who are just people. They're actually friends, but like they give so much wisdom in my life that they call out the bullshit. One of my friends, best friends, whatever you want to call it, like he was a mentor at first, and now I consider him a friend. But every time I call him, right, he can hear my tone, he can hear the words that I use, and I don't know, the guy's a genius, man. He's like a whiz. He like can hear out any bullshit that you say, and he'll call out anything and everything, even though it hurts, and it always hurts. And I'm like, man, I hate you, dude. Like, this hurts, but I know you're right. And I'm like, frick, I'm like, I hate you so much. But anyway, and then I have friends who are like, they're older than me. They're people that I respect. They're not so much like mentor guys. They're just people I hang with, but I appreciate their wisdom and I appreciate where they're at in life. I appreciate the success they've had. And I just want that influence. And I also appreciate their company, appreciate their values, appreciate who they are. And then I have people who are e-commerce friends who just, they could be not fitting with my values to some extent. I give leeway, right? It's like, look, if your values are too far off, then I'm not going to be your friend, even if you're e-commerce wise. Then there's local people that I hang out with. And I'm always, my own personal goal is I'm always friendly to everybody. And I will always be friendly. If someone sends me a message on Facebook, unless it's some girl who's like doing some sexy stuff, I'm like, block. But otherwise, I always say hello. Like, I always do. And I always try to see what the reason is. But you look at WeWork. I'm here at WeWork now, and I always approach people. I always say hello. I made some really cool friends at co-working spaces, people selling 8-figure software companies, the directors of big companies, like even at Carry Sports that I work at, I met like celebrities and I met stuff like that, and I've said hello to them. And poor people too, man. It's not like, I don't want to use the word poor, that's a wrong word, but like people who are normal, people who are like not in the world of e-commerce and maybe they're barely making money, like no problem. I've made friends with them too. I just want to make that emphasize on discernment and judgment. I'm not judging people, but there is discernment of like, hey, where is someone at in their life? And yes, I do segment them out in my head, but I don't actually judge them, and I don't actually act differently because someone's a certain status. But I am aware of that status or whatever I block them into in my head. And it changes over time too as you get to know someone. But anyway, that way nobody's judging me for saying that.
No, it is neat how you kind of have that, there's that distinction between, like you said, discernment and judgment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we kind of ran through a bit about you, a bit about, your business, what you're doing now, what you're looking to do in the future. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to say that you'd really just like to hit home?
I think if anybody's starting in entrepreneurship, I would say, like, if there was any advice that I could give, it's that, for one thing, I've never seen someone stick to something and fail. And I've seen plenty of people who give up, and that's when I consider them fail, right? And so it's like, you can't be half in and half out. You have to be fully committed to working on something. And I'm not talking about the initial hype that you get, right? When you start a project or an entrepreneurship, you get this initial hype where you're like, I'm all in. I'm not talking about that. That goes away. You have to be so committed to something that even when it's failing, that this current business, right? 1 year of failing, now over 100 grand put in, right? It's like, I can imagine people who are not where I'm at 6 months in to see failure, to see 50 grand down the drain, to be like, you know what? I tried it. It failed. I'm out. Wholesale. I tried it. It failed. I'm out. Wholesale is a little bit different. Real estate is a little bit different because there's so many scammer courses out there and in-person events that pisses me off. But like, I feel like if you're going to do something, you better stick to it. And you have to not dabble into other things. Read the one thing. It's funny because when I bought the one thing, the book, there was literally a real estate guy who had wrote like, "Hey, X name" to someone else. Like, "Thank you. Like, I hope you love this book on real estate." Blah blah blah. I ended up hitting that guy up, calling that guy. We're friends on Facebook. I was like, "That's cool of you to give the book." But the one thing, it's a book. It's very important, I think. Like, if you're gonna do real estate, do it all in. Like, stick to it. Be careful of who you learn from. Try to YouTube things. Do things for free. Don't go to courses at first, maybe. Um, and just YouTube it and try to figure it out, stick to it. And then like work on all the stories that go on in the brain, because like that's something that will inhibit every person in this journey. It inhibits everybody. It might be like your girlfriend's mad at you. Your story is my girlfriend's a bitch, when really that's just a story that your brain made, right? Or like your business is failing. Your story might be, oh, this business doesn't work. That's a story, right? In my mind, this whole time was like, success will come. I just need to figure it out. I just need to get better and better. I don't know if that's the exact story, but stories are things like maybe your mom's, always not throwing out the trash and you have to do it. Your story might be, oh, my mom's lazy, when really there might be a reason behind it, right? So I think like, yeah, sticking to it, not dabbling into other things, and really killing out the stories that you have and the lies that you have will really skyrocket anyone's success. And then lastly, I think like one of the most important things is stay true to the values that you hold. And yeah, okay, you might learn from someone, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their values are yours and that you need to take on their values. When I was learning e-commerce, I paid 20 grand for one mastermind, and the guy was teaching some very not so good stuff, right? And I was like, part of me would do it, and I was just like, oh, this must be what's right, blah blah. You're not thinking of the ethical stuff. And then later on, I look back and I'm like, oh my god, like that's weird. That doesn't align with my values. Why did I even do that? And it's like, find someone who aligns with your values and learn from them. That's a good thing to do. But anyway, that's all, man. And then live life your way and do things the way that you find works for you. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great to kind of have that perspective of, not only friendships, living life, the way that you want in accordance with your values. But yeah, that was terrific, Joseph. So let's say someone's watching right now. They, they find what you have to say pretty compelling. They want to get a hold of you, work together with you in the future. Where can we find you?
So I'm always on Facebook because I run Facebook ads for my business. The hashtag is the Joseph Wang, TheJosephWang. So facebook.com/thejosephwang. Just connect with me there. You can message me, no problem. I'll answer. I see message requests. So yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to put that in the description. Joseph, you've been a wonderful guest. I sure learned a lot, not only about you, a lot about business processes, friendship, the lies we tell ourselves. And I thought it was terrific. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. I hope that wasn't too ADHD on you, but in person, if we meet, it'll be the same experience. I'll be jumping from topic to topic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
You too.